The other one? She helps around the house. Laughter. 14 people at the table. My mother smiling like she'd just said something clever. And me, standing there with a serving spoon in my hand. I remember the sound more than the words. Forks against plates. Someone coughing to cover a laugh. My sister staring at her wine glass like it suddenly became fascinating. One daughter is a doctor, my mom said again, raising her glass toward Rachel. And the other, well, she's our maid. She winked. People chuckled. I didn't. It's strange what your body does in moments like that. My ears started ringing. Not dramatically. Just a soft, high hum. Like when you stand up too fast. I think I smiled. I hope I didn't. Because what I felt wasn't funny. It wasn't light. It wasn't teasing. It was small. Like someone had pressed their thumb into my chest and left it there. No one corrected her. Not my dad. Not my sister. Not even Aunt Linda, who usually corrects everyone about everything. I stood there holding mashed potatoes while 14 adults decided whether I was a joke. And maybe the worst part? I think some of them already believed it. Hi. I'm Emma. I didn't think I'd ever say this out loud. I almost didn't record this. I told myself it was dramatic. That families tease each other. That maybe I was too sensitive. I mean, it was Thanksgiving. People drink. People exaggerate. Right? But the thing about humiliation is that it doesn't leave when the dishes are done. It sits. It lingers in the quiet drive home. It follows you into the bathroom when you're brushing your teeth and you suddenly remember the exact tone of her voice. She helps around the house. Like I was a hobby. Like I was background furniture. And what nobody at that table knew, what they couldn't have known, was that I wasn't helping around the house. I was paying for it. Not in cash. In something else. Something I hadn't told anyone yet. Not even Rachel. And when my mom lifted her glass the second time to toast my sister again, something in me shifted. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just steady. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because to understand why that sentence landed the way it did, you need to understand what our family was like before that night. And maybe what I had already been carrying into that room. Thanksgiving at my parents' house has always followed the same pattern. My mom wakes up before sunrise even though dinner isn't until 4. The Macy's parade plays too loudly in the living room. My dad pretends he's in charge of the turkey, which mostly means he stands outside by the smoker with a beer and gives periodic updates no one asked for. It's predictable. Comfortable, even. Growing up, I liked that about our house. It wasn't loud in a chaotic way. It was structured. Clean. My mom believed in folded laundry the same day it came out of the dryer. She believed in thank you cards. She believed in appearances. Especially appearances. Rachel is 2 years older than me. She's brilliant in a way that feels effortless. Straight A's without trying. Science fairs. Scholarships. She always knew she wanted to be a doctor. By the time we were in high school, teachers were already introducing her to people as future Dr. Thompson. I was different. Not dumb. I don't think. Just slower to know things. I liked reading but not textbooks. I liked people more than competition. I changed my major twice in college before landing in communications because it felt broad enough to breathe inside. Rachel thrived on pressure. I dissolved under it. That's not her fault. It's just how it was. At family gatherings, relatives would ask Rachel about med school rotations and residency plans. They'd ask me where I was working now. I'd tell them about the nonprofit I was helping with social media. Oh, they'd say. Polite nod. And then back to Rachel. I told myself I didn't mind. Someone has to be the impressive one. Families need balance, right? But there were small moments. Like when my mom would introduce us at church. This is Rachel, she's in medical school. And then, this is Emma. She's figuring things out. I laughed it off the first few times. Figuring things out sounds harmless. But after a while, it starts to feel like a placeholder for not enough. Still, I loved my parents. I do love them. They weren't cruel. They paid for piano lessons. They came to my college graduation. My dad cried when I walked across the stage. It wasn't neglect. It was comparison. Subtle. Constant. Quiet. And I think I adjusted without realizing it. I became helpful. Reliable. If Rachel was the pride, I would be the peacekeeper. I'd clear dishes without being asked. I'd refill drinks. I'd notice when my mom was stressed and take over small things. It felt good to be needed. Even if it was for invisible work. This past year, though, things shifted. Rachel moved back home temporarily after finishing a brutal rotation. She said it was just until she matched with a residency program. My parents were thrilled. My mom redecorated the guest room. Bought new sheets. I was living there too. That part doesn't get mentioned as often. After college, I moved back home to save money. I told myself it was temporary. I picked up freelance marketing projects. I helped a local bakery revamp their branding. I worked part-time at a community center running social media campaigns. It wasn't glamorous. But it was building. At least, that's what I told myself. When Rachel moved back, something subtle changed in the house dynamic. The focus tilted harder toward her schedule. Her sleep mattered more because she was exhausted. Her stress mattered more because her job was life or death. I understood that. I really did. But I also started cooking more. Cleaning more. Running errands more. No one asked me to. It just happened. My mom would say, "Emma's so good at helping." Helping. I don't know why that word feels heavy now. At first it felt like appreciation. Later, it felt like identity. There was one moment, a few weeks before Thanksgiving, that I keep replaying. We were all in the kitchen. Rachel was talking about a complicated case she'd observed. My mom was hanging on every word. I mentioned that the nonprofit I'd been freelancing for was considering hiring me full-time to manage their communications strategy. My mom smiled. "That's sweet, honey." Sweet. Like a cupcake. Rachel didn't say anything. She wasn't dismissive. She just didn't engage. And I remember thinking, maybe I should have aimed higher. Maybe I should have tried harder. Maybe they're right and I'm just softer. I don't know. Have you ever felt like the supporting character in your own family? Not unloved. Just secondary. Maybe I should have seen what was building. Because Thanksgiving didn't start tense. It started like every other year. Warm kitchen. Cinnamon candles. Football on the TV. And me, tying my hair back, already in motion before anyone asked. I don't think I realized I was setting the stage for my own introduction. Not as Emma. But as the maid. And the worst part? Part of me had been rehearsing that role for years. After she said it the first time, I tried to tell myself it was just a joke. Families tease. Rachel gets called the golden child sometimes. My dad gets teased for burning toast. My mom gets teased for labeling leftovers like we're running a restaurant. But something about the way she said it. Not playful. Proud. Like she was presenting a comparison chart. Doctor. Maid. Neat categories. Easy to digest. I stood there holding the bowl and felt my face warm. I set it down carefully because my hands were starting to shake, and I didn't trust myself not to drop it. No one looked at me directly. That part hurt more than the laughter. They looked at their plates. At Rachel. At my mom. I went back to the kitchen under the excuse of grabbing gravy. I needed a wall. I leaned against the counter and stared at the tile backsplash like it might explain something. Why did that word stick so hard? Because I do clean? Because I cook? Because I live at home? Or because somewhere along the way, that's what I'd become to them? I thought about the mornings I woke up early to pack my dad's lunch when he had long shifts. The afternoons I reorganized the pantry because my mom said it stressed her out. The weekends I drove Rachel to appointments when she didn't feel like dealing with traffic. I never asked for rent. I never asked for praise either. I just did things. And I started to wonder. Did they think that's all I did? Was I background maintenance? The nonprofit job offer flashed through my mind. The email sitting unanswered in my inbox because I was scared to commit. Because I wasn't sure if I deserved to call it a real career. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not because it wasn't important. But because I didn't want to hear that soft, polite tone again. That's sweet. I went back into the dining room. My mom was mid-story about Rachel assisting in surgery. Everyone leaned forward. Rachel looked slightly embarrassed but also comfortable. This was her terrain. And then my mom reached for her glass again. To my brilliant daughter, she said. Rachel laughed quietly. Mom. And to Emma, my mom added, smiling at me like I was part of the punchline, who keeps this house running? I don't know what I'd do without my live-in maid. Live-in. That word was heavier. More accurate. More exposing. Someone at the end of the table actually clapped. I heard Aunt Linda say, well, every family needs one. Needs one. Like a role. Like a utility. I think something inside me went quiet right then. Not explosive. Not fiery. Just still. It's strange how humiliation can clarify things. I looked at Rachel. She didn't laugh that time. But she didn't correct it either. And I realized something I hadn't fully allowed myself to see before. They didn't think I was temporarily living at home while building something. They thought I had settled into being helpful. That this was my lane. That Rachel was rising and I was maintaining. And maybe the most painful realization wasn't what my mom said. It was that no one seemed surprised by it. Not shocked. Not uncomfortable. It fit. It fit their narrative of me. I felt myself shrinking in real time. I tried to speak once. I opened my mouth. And nothing came out. Because what do you say? Actually, I'm building a communications portfolio and negotiating a salary right now. Actually, I'm contributing more than you think. It sounded defensive in my head before I even tried. So I swallowed it. I sat down. And I passed the rolls. I watched my mother beam at Rachel. I watched 14 people resume eating. And I had this awful, sinking thought. If I don't say something now, this becomes permanent. Not just the joke. The identity. The label. I wasn't angry yet. I was erased. And I don't know if that's worse. Because anger burns. But erasure? It just hollows. By the time dessert came out, I could feel the shift inside me solidifying. Not loud. Not dramatic. But present. For the first time that night, I wasn't trying to smooth things over. I was observing. Me. Them. The roles. And the truth was starting to form in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. They didn't know who I was becoming. And maybe that was partly my fault. But the bigger question was, did they even want to know? And sitting there, spooning whipped cream onto pumpkin pie like I'd done every year since I was 16, I realized something that scared me more than the joke itself. If I stayed quiet again, I would be agreeing with her. I didn't speak right away. That's important. Because part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted to stand up so abruptly my chair scraped the hardwood and just correct her. Not yell. Not cry. Just calmly say, "I'm not your maid." But that would have sounded emotional. Defensive. And I could already imagine the aftermath. "Oh, Emma, it was just a joke. You're being sensitive. We didn't mean it like that." The familiar soft gaslighting of family dynamics. Not malicious. Just dismissive. So instead of reacting, I watched. I noticed who avoided eye contact. Who looked uncomfortable. Who genuinely found it funny. I noticed Rachel's hands tighten around her fork. That was new. She wasn't laughing anymore. And for a split second, I wondered if she felt it too. The imbalance. The weight of it. But she didn't say anything. Neither did I. Not yet. Dessert plates clinked. Someone asked about Christmas plans. Football commentary hummed from the living room. The night tried to move on. And that's when I felt something settle inside me. Not rage. Not sadness. Clarity. It wasn't about the word made. It was about the narrative. I had allowed myself to become the quiet support system because it felt safe. Because it avoided comparison. Because it let Rachel shine without conflict. But somewhere along the way, helpful became invisible. And invisible became identitied. I excused myself after dessert. No dramatic exit. Just a soft, "I need some air." The November air was cold and sharp, and it cleared my head faster than anything inside that house could. I sat on the front steps and replayed the last year. Moving back home. Putting my career on pause to figure things out. Cooking. Cleaning. Driving. Supporting. Waiting for the right moment to step forward. But maybe the moment doesn't arrive. Maybe you create it. The nonprofit email came back to me again. The full-time offer. The salary proposal I had been too nervous to counter. I had told myself I'd wait until after the holidays to decide. Suddenly, waiting felt like surrender. I pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered over the email thread. My heart was pounding, not because of anger, but because of fear. Fear of stepping out of the role that everyone seemed comfortable with. Fear of failing publicly instead of quietly. Fear of disappointing them. But then I heard my mom's voice in my head again. "Live-in maid." It wasn't cruel in tone. That almost made it worse. She believed it. And if she believed it, then I hadn't shown her otherwise. I typed. Deleted. Typed again. I countered the salary. Higher than I originally planned. My hands were shaking. I hit send before I could overthink it. And then I just sat there. Breathing. Maybe it was small. Maybe it didn't change the room inside. But something in me shifted from reactive to intentional. When I walked back in, the dishes were half cleared. My mom was stacking plates. Rachel was helping. That surprised me. She glanced up when she saw me. There was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Guilt? Awareness? Or maybe I was projecting. "Everything okay?" she asked quietly. I nodded. Yeah. And for the first time that night, my voice didn't feel small. It wasn't loud either. Just steady. I picked up a plate, not automatically, but deliberately. There's a difference. I wasn't doing it because it was expected. I was choosing to. And that choice felt new. I don't think empowerment is a lightning bolt moment. It's more like a temperature change. Subtle at first. Then undeniable. I didn't know yet what I was going to say. But I knew I wasn't going to let the second toast pass the same way the first one did. Not with 14 people watching. Not with myself watching. Because this time, if I stayed quiet, it wouldn't be confusion. It would be agreement. And I wasn't agreeing anymore. Coffee was being poured. Chairs scraped softly against the floor. People were loosening up the way they do after pie and wine. My mom stood again. She always does one last toast. It's her thing. To family, she said. Glasses lifted. To blessings. To Rachel's bright future. There it was again. That tilt. That spotlight. And to Emma, she added lightly, smiling toward me, for keeping our lives organized. We'd fall apart without her. A few soft laughs. Not as loud this time. But enough. I stood up. I didn't slam my glass down. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood. The room noticed. 14 people. Quieting. I actually have something to add, I said. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. I almost sat back down. Maybe I shouldn't have done it. Maybe it would have been easier to let the night end politely. But I stayed standing. I'm not the maid, I said. Calm. Clear. You could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. My mom blinked. Honey, it was just. I know, I interrupted softly. Not sharp. Just firm. I know it was meant to be funny. I swallowed. But I think it only works as a joke if everyone knows it's not true. Silence. Rachel looked up at me fully now. I kept going before I lost the nerve. I live here because I chose to save money while building my career. I cook because I like taking care of people. I help because I care about this family. My hands were shaking under the table. I tucked them against my sides. But I'm not staff. Someone shifted in their chair. My dad cleared his throat. I turned slightly toward my mom. And I accepted a full-time communications director position tonight. I negotiated my salary before coming back inside. There it was. Out. Hanging in the air. My mom's face changed first. Confusion. Then surprise. You, what? She asked. I've been freelancing for a nonprofit this year. They offered me a leadership role. I just confirmed it. I didn't add the salary number. I didn't need to. It wasn't about money. It was about definition. Rachel spoke quietly. That's amazing, Em. I looked at her. I couldn't tell if she meant it fully. But she said it. And that mattered. My aunt shifted uncomfortably. Well, that's wonderful news. The energy in the room was tight now. Not explosive. Just stretched. My mom set her glass down. I didn't mean to imply you were less, she said carefully. I nodded. I know. And I did know. That was the complicated part. She wasn't trying to wound me. She just didn't see me. And maybe I hadn't forced her to. I just don't want to be introduced like that anymore, I said. My voice almost cracked on the last word. I hated that. But I didn't stop. I'm still figuring things out sometimes. But I'm not invisible. No one clapped this time. No one laughed. 14 people just sat there. Quiet. Maybe I shouldn't have made it heavy. Maybe Thanksgiving wasn't the place. I still don't know. But I know this. For the first time in that house, I didn't feel small while standing. My mom nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Not defensive. Not warm either. Just absorbing. My dad finally spoke. Well. That's something to be thankful for. It wasn't poetic. But it broke the tension enough for people to breathe again. Glasses lifted awkwardly. To Emma, someone said. This time, there was no joke attached. Just my name. And I sat down. My legs felt weak. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exposed. Like I'd peeled something back that everyone was used to not seeing. Rachel leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "I'm proud of you." I didn't look at her right away, because part of me was still deciding if I believed that. But I nodded. And the rest of the night moved forward. Different. Not louder. Just different. And even though I questioned myself all the way through washing the final dish, I knew one thing for sure. Silence would have hurt more. The night didn't explode. That's what people expect when you finally say the thing you've been holding in. No one stormed out. No one cried dramatically. No one accused me of ruining Thanksgiving. It was quieter than that. Almost tender, in an awkward way. People started putting on coats not long after. Hugs were exchanged. Compliments about the pie. Promises to do this again soon. But something had shifted in the room. Conversations were softer. More careful. Aunt Linda hugged me a little tighter than usual. "That's wonderful about the job," she said into my shoulder. Really wonderful. I couldn't tell if she meant the job or the fact that I'd spoken up. Maybe both. Rachel left early the next morning for a shift at the hospital. Before she walked out, she knocked on my bedroom door. She doesn't usually knock. I was still in bed, half awake. "Can I come in?" she asked. That alone felt new. She sat on the edge of my desk chair and looked at me in that thoughtful way she does when she's choosing words carefully. "I didn't realize Mom's jokes were landing like that," she said. I shrugged. I didn't either. Until they did. She nodded slowly. I think I got used to being the doctor daughter. And I didn't notice what that made you. That stung. But not in a sharp way. In a truthful way. "I don't blame you," I said. And I meant it. She hesitated. "I should have said something last night. Maybe. But I didn't say that. Instead, I said, I needed to. And that was the difference. It wasn't her job to defend me if I hadn't even defined myself. That realization was uncomfortable. But freeing too. Later that afternoon, my mom knocked on my door. That also doesn't usually happen. She stood in the doorway for a second before coming in, like she was entering unfamiliar territory. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began. I sat up straighter without meaning to. "I never meant to reduce you," she continued. I guess I got used to describing Rachel's career because it's easy to explain." "And mine isn't?" I asked, softer than it sounds. She sighed. "I didn't fully understand what you were building." There it was. Not cruelty. Not favoritism in some villainous way. Just ignorance. And maybe assumption. "I should have asked more," she added. That surprised me. My mom doesn't apologize often. Not because she's incapable. Just because she's usually sure. "I could have told you more," I admitted. Because I could have. I kept my work quiet partly out of fear it wouldn't measure up. And silence creates its own story. She sat on the edge of my bed. "You've always been the steady one," she said. "The one who makes things easier." I swallowed. "That doesn't mean that's all I am." She nodded. "I see that now." Do I believe she fully understood in that moment? I don't know. Growth isn't instant. It's layered. But something softened between us. That week, small things changed. She introduced me differently when neighbors stopped by. "This is Emma." She just accepted a communications director role. Director. The word felt unfamiliar and heavy in my ears. But she said it without hesitation. I noticed she started asking questions about my projects. Real ones. Not polite placeholders. Rachel did too. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments where old habits slipped through. Comparisons still surfaced sometimes. But now, I corrected them. Gently. And that felt normal instead of terrifying. The nonprofit confirmed my counteroffer 2 days later. They agreed. I stared at the email for a long time before it sank in. Not because of the number. Because of what it represented. I didn't wait to be defined anymore. I defined myself. Living at home didn't feel like regression after that. It felt transitional. Intentional. And the funny thing is, I still cook dinner sometimes. I still clean the kitchen. I still drive Rachel to the train station if she needs it. But now it's not my identity. It's my choice. And choice feels different. Lighter. There wasn't a cinematic reconciliation. No big family meeting where everything got unpacked perfectly. Just small corrections. New language. More awareness. And me, speaking sooner when something feels off instead of letting it settle into silence. I'm still figuring things out. That part hasn't changed. But now, when someone asks what I do, I don't soften it. I don't shrink it. I say it clearly. And I let it sit. Because I'm not the maid. I'm Emma. And that finally feels like enough. I still think about that night sometimes. Not in a dramatic, replay it before bed way. Just, when something similar happens. When someone makes a small comment that sounds harmless but lands heavy. When I notice myself about to laugh something off so the room stays comfortable. I catch it faster now. That's probably the biggest difference. I used to think strength looked loud. Confident. Immediate. Like knowing exactly what to say in the moment. But for me, it looked like shaking hands and a steady voice anyway. It looked like standing up even while questioning if I should. It looked like not turning it into a fight. Just a correction. And I still don't think my mom is a bad person. I don't think my sister was trying to overshadow me. Families build roles without realizing it. The smart one. The sensitive one. The responsible one. The mess. And if you don't interrupt the pattern, it just continues. I played my part for a long time. Because it was easier than risking being misunderstood. But there's something heavier about being misseen than misunderstood. Misunderstood means someone got it wrong. Misseen means they never looked closely. And sometimes that's on them. But sometimes it's also on you for staying quiet. That part was hard to accept. I think I was waiting for someone to notice that I was building something. That I had ambition. That I wasn't just filling space. But people aren't mind readers. And silence can look like agreement. If I could go back, I wouldn't change the moment itself. The joke. The humiliation. As much as it stung, it forced clarity. It forced me to decide whether I was okay being introduced to support staff in my own life. And I wasn't. I don't know what you would have done in that room. Maybe you would have handled it differently. Maybe you would have waited and talked privately later. Maybe you would have laughed it off and never brought it up again. There isn't one right way. I still question mine sometimes. But I do know this. When I hear my mom introduce me now, there's no wink attached. No punchline. Just my name and what I do. And that feels balanced. If you've ever felt like the background character in your own family story. I'm genuinely curious, did you say something? Or did you carry it quietly? Sometimes speaking up doesn't change everything overnight. But it changes you. And that's enough to start. So that's my story, folks. If it resonated with you, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far Uncle Mickle's voice travels. You teach people how to see you by how clearly you're willing to stand in your own name.